So what we need to do is we need to save or load our preferences. So we're going to go to the P drive on the computer, and we're going to delete the 2016 folder. Okay, that 2016 folder is someone else's preferences. Probably the class after us who came in, that's their preferences. So we need to load our preferences. Okay, so now we're going to go into our folder, so whatever your folder is, inside the 2510. And then we should have a 2016 folder in there. Now, if somehow you lost your 2016 folder, don't worry about it. We'll get it back later on. Okay, but if you have it there, which you should, you're just going to right-click and say copy.
What class is this?
Intro. And then we're going to go back to the P drive. You can see I can just click on the P drive up here. And then we're going to right-click and just paste it. Okay, so every time you come into class, you need to delete whatever preferences are already there, and then you need to copy your preferences and put them into the correct spot. Okay, so right on the P drive is where that spot's going to be. Now we can go and open up Maya. Maya hotkeys. While we're waiting for Maya to open, I'm going to point out something else about Maya's hotkeys in that they're case sensitive. Okay, so that means that W and Shift W or capital W are two different hotkeys. They do two different things. So if our caps lock is set on, that could really screw us up because W is our move key. So if we hit Shift W, that actually sets keyframes, and that may screw up what we're trying to do. So make sure that as you're looking at these hotkeys and you're trying to go through and memorize what the hotkeys are doing, that you understand that it's all lowercase in everything that's up here. I don't think I have anything uppercase except for Shift Z would be an uppercase Z, Shift P would be an uppercase P, and then Shift H would be an uppercase H. I believe everything else is, lowercase. Okay? So I'm going to set that off to the side. It's good habit to get into that as you're working in the class, you have your hotkey sheet by you somewhere, and maybe a piece of note paper also. As we work, there are certain things that you need to remember. One of the important things, delete the old preferences, copy your preferences. Every single class, okay? Every single time you work in these computers, delete the old preferences, put your preferences in there. All right. So now we're back in Maya. I'm going to turn this show it start off up. I don't need that anymore. All right, let's review real quick what we've discussed last time. Last time we discussed the menu bar up here, the fact that we can change the menu bar using this drop down. We added shelf items in here, so we have delete history, center pivot, such and such. We have tools here, but we don't want to use the tools on the left-hand side. What we want to use are the hotkeys on the keyboard. So we have Q, which is just the selection tool, W, which is the move tool, E, which is rotate, and R is scale. Q, W, E, R. Okay? Now on your keyboard, just hit Q, W, E, R and see if your things are toggling like mine are toggling. Okay, so if you hit Q, W, E, R, are they toggling through that list? Is anyone's not toggling through that list? Excellent, everyone's toggling. Okay, this is kind of like a sucky thing about Maya, is it's actually mouse sensitive as to where your mouse is clicked on as to what's going to work. So if I'm, let's say I'm over here, I'm just going to make an object real quick. And I click this. Okay, so let's say I've clicked on one of these and then I want to go to the move tool and I hit W. Dang it. This is one of those wonderful times. Let me just rename this. All right, it's not going to do it this time, but what happens is my hotkeys don't work because my main window is not activated. Okay.
If you're typing in a value, then you should do that.
There we go. That's good. Thank you. So as I'm typing in a value, you see that my hotkeys don't work because it still thinks I'm typing in a value. So sometimes we have to click on this bar here, and then my hotkeys will work correctly. Okay. So just be aware of that. That sometimes when you're trying to get to your hotkey, it may not work because you're not clicked on the right thing. All right. So we have Q, W, E, R, which are those. We also have Oops. 1, 2, 3, which are kind of smoothing modes. We really can't see much happening here. Let me make a cube so we can see it. 1, 2, 3. So we can see different smoothing modes. We also have 4, which is wireframe. 5 is shaded. We didn't get into making textures yet or lighting, but 6 and 7 are lighting. Okay. So we've done all of that, and we've also done the Alt left mouse button to tumble, Alt middle mouse button to do tracking, and Alt right mouse button to zoom in and out. Okay. So those are where we've left off. Now what we want to do is just take 5 minutes. Okay. What did we make last time? What did I have you guys build?
A Lego.
A Lego. Okay. So let's take 5 minutes and build another Lego just to refresh your memory on all those things that we did. Now, as you start playing with the software, this process of building this very, very simple Lego gets quicker and quicker and quicker, and then also more accurate. The quicker we are, the more accurate we are at doing this kind of thing. So if it didn't go smoothly this time, trust me that next time it'll go quicker, and the time after that it'll go even quicker. As a practice, I recommend that whenever you get a chance, make this Lego, because it's a good little exercise just to practice with all these little tools that we're going to be using. All right, so now some of you have already discovered a couple things. One of them is this. If we tap the space bar, we go out of this mode and we get back to that 4 view, right? I think we talked about that last time a little bit. So if I tap the space bar, you see that I go into these different views. So I can go into the top view, the front view, or the side view simply by holding my mouse over that view and just tapping the space bar. So this is, again, a good way for us to be able to see what something looks like from the top, the side, or the front, especially when we're working with a Lego, because as we do that, we want to see where those pegs are being positioned, because this view only gets us so far. As I scale this in and move it up, it's very difficult to kind of get this lined up with where it is evenly from side to side. So if I tap the space bar and go to the top view, you see how I can move this and align it so that I can see exactly where it is positioned on the cube exactly from the top. Our navigation is still the same in the top view, front view, and side view, except we can't Alt and drag to tumble around because it's a flat view, okay? So I can pan, I can zoom, but I can't tumble, which is no big deal. So here, look how easy I can just duplicate and then duplicate this and get this pretty evenly from side to side. So there is some guesswork, but the guesswork is minimal compared to where it would be otherwise, okay? So it's a good thing to kind of use these things. Also, if I needed to jump to my front view and lower these, look how easy it is to lower them or raise them and see exactly how high they're going, okay? So some people work continuously in and out of these views all day long. It's a good habit to get into, especially at first, just so you understand the concept of 3D. Some people treat 3D as more of a 2D program and try to make these flat images, but then when they spin around, it doesn't look very 3D. It looks like 2D that you've kind of deformed. All right, so use those. Now, I don't do this. This is something I don't do, is pop in and out of these views. I want you to hold down the space bar, okay? So just keep your mouse in the center of your screen and hold down the space bar. Okay, now when we hold down the space bar, you know how we have all the different menus that are up top? This is showing us all the different menus at once, okay? So over here where it says modeling and it has all these menus, well, it's hard to see. They're right here, mesh, edit mesh, mesh tools, mesh display. All of those are the modeling ones. If I switch to the rigging, that's this one. If I switch to animation, that's this one. If I switch to dynamics, it's this one. And if I switch to rendering, it's that one, okay? So all those menus that are up top, we can access just by holding the space bar. Amazing stuff. If we get in the habit of using this, our workflow gets really, really quick, okay? Because we know exactly where all these menus are. If I'm assigning a material, I can go down here. If I'm modeling something, I can go here. If I'm animating something, I can go here, okay? Without having to come up here and switch the menu and then try to get to those areas, okay? Now, the thing I wanted to show with this is if we hold the space bar, not there, if we hold the space bar down and we hold the left mouse button down in the center of this where it says Maya, see how it says perspective, left, top, back, front, bottom, right, and new camera? These are all the different views that we can get to. So if I want to see the top, I just let go on the top, and now I can see the top view. Okay? So just take a second and just swap to some of those other views. When we render stuff, we're actually rendering out through cameras. Okay? So if we wanted this to be like that, that's how we would angle this camera to show that Lego. Okay? And then that's how it would look when it came out of the software. If we wanted it to look like this, it would look like that. If we wanted to animate a camera sweeping across the object, we would animate a camera sweeping across, and then that would come out of there. Now the biggest thing in this, pay attention to the name down here, perspective, okay? So every camera that you go into has a name. So if I go to the front view, you see it says front. If I go to the top view or the right view, it'll say side. I don't know why it says right view for side, but it does. Now we also have like bottom view, and we also have left view. And then right one is the only one that says side, which is kind of weird. Whatever. So those are the different ways to get to cameras. Now again, the more we do this, the quicker we get, to the point where I don't even have to look and I know which view I'm going into without having to look. And you can't even see the menu. It's just that quick as happening. The software knows that quick of how I want to get to a different view. Okay? So that's holding the space bar down, holding the left mouse button down, and then switching between these views here. Okay? Now the other thing that people have found is if I click on an object, I want you to click on any object in your scene with the left mouse button, and then I want you to hold the right mouse button down on that object. So just hold the right mouse button down, and you'll see that a window pops up, and that window is called a marking menu. Okay? It allows you to get to components of that item. So remember from Illustrator class, you had a pen tool, right? You click some points, and it would create a path. And then using this selection tool, you can grab the points. Using this one, you can grab the whole object, right? So that's what this is going to allow you to do. This specific piece has more than just points connecting it. It has edges, it has faces, it has other stuff that we can play with. So if we right click and hold, we can go to edge, vertex, or face. These are the three ones that we are most likely going to go to, and we can start to play with some of these. So what I want you to do is go to vertex. Okay? So right click and hold on an object, and then go to vertex. What's the first thing we notice about that object?
It gave us points.
And what else?
It turned blue.
It turned blue. So the original color was green. All right? So Maya is very good about color coding what it's doing. So it's not just going to give you points and stay green, it's going to actually change color. And that way we know we're in what's called component mode. Okay? If you look at your hotkey sheet, whatever you want to call it, there is a toggle down here. It says Object Component F8. And that's essentially what we're doing, is we're going into the components, allowing us to edit the individual pieces. And if we were to hit F8 a couple times, we would get back out of that into object mode, allowing us to select the individual object. Okay? So right now, if I click on a point, go to the move tool, I can move that point around. So grab one of your points or a couple points and move those points around. And if you get out of it, just hold the right mouse button again, go back to vertex, spin around the object. All right, the other thing you may see, and this might be something else that is popping up, you may see this. Does anyone see a yellow bar instead of a blue wireframe? No? All right, hit the B key on your keyboard. Okay, so B means soft select. So as I was grabbing points before, see how I grab this one point and I move it and only that point is moving? If I hit B and I move it, you can see that the whole thing is moving. Okay?
5 points, don't select on it.
Create a sphere. Okay, so here's a sphere, and if I grab this vertex right there and I move it, you can see how pointy this vertex gets. Okay, I didn't want that. I just wanted to kind of pull up all of them. Well, if I grab all of them, I'm going to go to a different angle here and grab these and pull them up. You can see it's a very rough transition. It's basically nice and smooth, and then we get this rough transition. But if I click on that point here, I go to my soft select, and I'm adjusting the settings now. and then I adjust it, you can see how now this is softly moving. It's softly transitioning. So imagine we have a character and his nose is regular, but then we need to make it more Sean Sarcona where it's further out. We don't want it to be rough, so we can grab those points and just pull them out a little bit, okay, without screwing up the rest of it. And I can grab this and pull this out. You can see how soft that transition goes. So there's times where we'll use soft select to rough out a shape, okay, and there's times where we won't use it at all because we just don't need it because we want that transition to be there. But again, it's something that freaks you out because as you're trying to grab this point over here and move it, the whole thing is kind of moving. So if you see the yellow and the red and the purple, you can just hit B and that goes away, okay? So B is your soft select toggle on and off. All right, so this was vertex, which is the points. It's the very, very tiniest component that we could edit. Hold down the right mouse button again and go to edge. Okay? And edge is going to allow you to edit the lines now. All right? So this line right here, I can click on and I can move that line. I can click on this one and move that line. So I'm moving any of these lines that highlight. And the neat thing about this is that we're essentially moving two vertices, right? Because we have one line and there's a vertice on each end. So it allows us to quickly move those two vertices. Cool? Cool. All right, now we're going to right click again and go to face. So right click and hold, go to face. And now what we can do is we can click on the actual area around edges. Okay, so you'll see how it highlights in this kind of peach color, allowing us to grab these faces and adjust where these faces are at. Okay, edges, vertices, and faces are our three components that we're always going to be playing with. Okay, let me jump to the 2510 definitions. All right, so we went over component mode, a selection mode allowing you to select the components of an object, okay? Not the whole object itself. I modeled a human, I just want to move the human, that's the object. But if I want to take the human and give him bigger eyes or a longer nose or smaller cheekbones or whatever, I'm going to grab the components. So in component mode allows you to select those. Further down on here we have face. And the face is simply just the area between three or more polygons, or three or more vertices of a polygon. So when you have 3 points, they're connected by edges, and that area is a face. Okay, so you have to have at least 3 points for that to happen. And then we have edge, which is the line connecting 2 vertices of a polygon. And we have vertex. Scoot out of the way. Come on. Yes, that's what I want. There we go. There we go, a single point on a polygon. Okay, now all of these say polygon. That's all of those definitions were specific to polygons. Polygons are the kind of object that we've modeled here. Okay, a polygon has edges, vertices, and faces. We went to create polygon primitives and we created a polygon, in this case a polygon cylinder and a polygon cube. There's also something called NURBS primitives. Okay. The biggest difference between NURBS and polygons are NURBS are more memory intensive. They're more mathematically configured to look the way they look. So if I were to create a sphere, you can see how this sphere is a NURBS, has a lot less divisions than this sphere as a polygon. Okay? Now the NURBS one, you can kind of consider a NURBS kind of like the pen tool when you click and pull the handlebars out, and you can tweak what those handlebars are doing, right? That's kind of like what a NURBS is. Now imagine you didn't have handlebars. In order for you to create a very smooth circle, you would have to create a bunch of points, right? You have to click like 1,000 points. That's more like a polygon, all right? So a NURBS, it stands for non-uniform rational B-spline. You don't have to remember that. Where are you at? There you are. Except for the test, non-uniform rational basis spline, B-spline, which is a mathematically calculated surface. Obviously, NURBS, it's right there in the answer. So you can just remember that. It's right in the answer. There you go. A polygon is, it uses points, it's typically in rough mode, and then smoothed out. Okay, so most of the stuff that you're going to do is going to be done inside polygon mode. If you go to a video game engine, everything's polygons. If you take this and you bring it into another software, typically it's going to be polygons. NURBs are something that are very reserved, kind of like inside the software kind of usage. There's very specific uses for this. We're not going to use them for right now, okay? So anytime you create something, you can ignore the NURBS primitives and just use the polygon ones. I only want to show this because as I right click on here, you'll see that I get different options, okay? I get isoparm, I get control vertex, I get surface point, I get surface patch, I get hull, completely different stuff. I also, if I were to create a NURBS cube, there's a NURBS cube, and if I created a polygon cube, okay, they look pretty identical, yes, yes. But if I were to click the polygon and move it, you see there's no issue. If I click the NURBS and move it, you see how it broke, okay? Because the NURBS cube is actually consistent or composed of 6 different pieces, okay? So as you're creating something, guess what it helps to do? Not make a NURBS cube if you don't want a NURBS cube, okay? So for most things, use polygons, all right? The polygons have other tools. There's a whole bunch of tools very specific to polygons. So if you start off with the NURBS, you can kind of run into trouble then. Yes, ma'am.
What if you wanted to hollow out like the inside of a rectangle?
Oops, not that. As in, like here's a polygon cube, right?
Yeah.
Now I'm inside it.
Okay.
Okay, so it's still hollowed out. There's still nothing inside of that object. Keep in mind that your objects don't actually have thickness right now. They're just paper, right? So let's pretend that this is a, I'm going to delete this face. That's one of the neat things we can do with polygons. So now this is open. So one of the polygon tools is called extrude. And using extrude, I can actually give something thickness. So now this, if I reverse this. So now this looks like it actually has thickness. It looks like more of like a crate than it does just like a standard box, okay? So there's lots of things that as we start playing with these tools, there's different ways that we can use that. All right, and part of that success is starting off with polygons. If we start off with NURBS, then we have to do other stuff to get the same kind of results. Okay, so just to recap, we went over the spacebar so that we could tap in and out of the different views, right? We held the spacebar down, and we can switch to the new views using this. We can right click and go to edge, go to vertex, or go to face. Some of these other ones like vertex face, this is a weird one. Let me go to something like this. All right, I'm gonna go to vertex face, and it kind of like explodes it, okay? I have never, ever, ever found a use for this, but it's there and it freaks people out. So maybe that's the whole intent of the software developers, is just to freak people out. It just explodes it so you can see the pieces, but you can't do anything with it. Okay, like I can't move the pieces or anything. So I've never found a use for it. The multi one allows you to grab anything. So I can grab vertices, I can grab faces, and I can grab edges all in one. To start off, I don't recommend using multi because you should understand what tools need selecting for what. Okay, so I would stick with just going to face, edge, or vertex for now. Now to get out of this mode, we can do 2 things. One, we can tap F8, not F and 8, but the F function 8, F8 on the very top row. We can tap it until we get to green. Okay, when it turns green, we're out of that mode. Or what we can do is we right click and we just go to object mode. Okay, so those are the 2 modes. Component, grab the individual pieces, or object, grab the whole object. Okay, so get yourself out of component mode and back to object mode. All right, so if you click on something and it turns, what color do we know it's object mode? Green, okay. All right. So now we have that, now we have that. I'm just gonna delete that piece and just fix this. It's gonna bother me. All right. All right, so those are the components. Now, as we're going into component mode and we're right clicking and we're going to vertex or edge or faces or whatever, notice up here at the top, okay? So watch mine as I go to face mode. It's not gonna do it. As I hit F8, there we go. As I hit F8 at the very top, you'll see at the very top row right here how it changed that menu. Okay, so do you see on the very top of this how it changes this menu? So this is a way for us to select exactly what we want. If we forget that we can right click and go to one of these, we can hit F8 and then choose from this menu what we want. So the far right, if I right click, is vertices. And now I can grab vertices and I can move vertices around. If I turn that off, I can go over here to edges. I can right click to verify edges is there. And then I can grab edges and move edges around. If I turn edges off, I right click on this, go to faces. Now I can grab faces and move faces around. Okay? Now where that bar up top is very helpful is, let's pretend, I'm going to just duplicate this a couple times. Okay? So let's say I have these two objects and I want to grab the faces for each object. If I right click on this and go to face, do you see how it only puts the one object in face mode? It doesn't put both objects in face mode. Okay? So that's where this comes in handy, is if I hit F8, I can choose face mode, and then I can grab the faces for each one of these and do something with it. Okay? And obviously to get that shape, it helps to have both of those selected at the same time, as opposed to clicking this one and moving it down, and then clicking that one and moving it down. And maybe they're accurate, maybe they're not. Most likely they're not. Nope, they're not. Okay? And then maybe I move this, and then move the face, whatever. Okay? So it definitely helps to be able to select both of those at the same time using that F8 key. Okay? And then I hit F8, and I'm back out of it. All right? So get in the habit of doing both. When I am selecting the individual components of an object, I just right click and go to vertex, face, or edge. But when I'm doing multiple objects, I hit F8 and then I go to that menu up top. Okay? So again, just to get comfortable with understanding what that whole mess is up there. All right. Let's make a new scene here. File, new. Don't save your stuff. It's taking an incredibly long time for that to happen. There we go. All right, so what I want to do now is I want to actually start building our room, our scene for this. So our mini room, we have to actually start building a room first. We have to have walls and a floor and a ceiling in order for us to actually create something like that. Like I said before, Maya likes to stay organized, so we have to start off organizing this entire thing. So we're going to do what's called making a project. So under File, go down to the project window. Okay? So File, project window, and we're going to go to New on the far right.
Wait, never.
Got it?
Yeah.
Okay. For the current project, call it your last name underscore Miniroom.
I don't have that name.
So what we're going to do here is we give it a name. So we have to click New first and give it a name. Then we have to tell it where we want to save this. Okay. So we're going to click on the folder and we're going to pick our work drive. Remember we created some folders last time? So I'm going to go into my P drive, go to Sarcona 2510, work. And then hit select. Okay? So your location should be P drive, last name underscore W 2016, 2510, work. Cool? Cool. I'm telepathic. I'm assuming everyone said cool. The bottom stuff here we don't have to touch. Okay? So what this whole process does is, you know how like in Illustrator or in After Effects or in any other tool where you need to stay organized, you typically may create folders. And in this folder it might be logos. In this folder it might be videos. In this folder it might be sound. In this folder it might be birds eating pajamas. I don't know. Whatever it is, you have them organized by some sort of folder. Maya's going to create all those folders for us. Okay? So we have all the names here. We hit accept. And there it is. That we just did right here, the file project window, making a new project, telling it where to go. it made all these folders. So I'm going to go into my folder just so you can see it, but you'll see it made a Sarcona Miniroom folder. A second ago that wasn't there. As I go into that folder, it created all of these folders. Okay? Now we're not going to use every one of these folders. We're going to use 3. These are our 3 main ones we're going to use. Scene, source images, and images. Okay? Those are the 3 main ones we're going to use. So make sure you write that down so you know which 3 you're going to be using. It might be easier if I type it up here because I'm faster at typing than writing. Come on, maybe. There we go. Shuffle that over there, put that over there. Okay, so the scenes, that's our file. When we save our work project, it goes inside the scenes folder, okay? So when we're working on something, we build a cat and we save a cat, it goes into the scenes folder, and that's where it's going to be residing. If it's outside the scenes folder, you need to put it inside the scenes folder so everything stays organized. Okay. Source images, files coming in. Where are my margins at? I just need less margin. Page setup. There we go. Okay, so our source images are files coming into our software. So if we had a car dashboard and we needed a picture of wood to make the car dashboard look like it had wood on it, we would get a picture of wood from the internet, from a website called textures.com or our own resources, and we would bring that picture and we would put it inside the source images folder. And when Maya looks for textures, that's where it's going to look for textures, is inside the source images folder. And then when we are done with stuff, it sends the files that we're done with into the images folder, okay? So these are the 3 folders that we're going to constantly be working with throughout this software. And anything you put inside Maya should go inside the source images. Anything you take out should be inside images, okay? I encourage you too that as you work in the software, that you go back maybe in like 2 weeks from now and re-watch just even quickly these first couple videos, because some of these things, I'm throwing a lot at you right now, but some of these things are super important. Imagine you did your work in After Effects, okay? You spent 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks working on something, and then you rendered it out, but you don't know where it went, okay? That's what we need to make sure of. That's what those folders are going to make sure that our stuff stays organized. So we need to make sure we understand where those are at. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create a polygon cube. Okay. So create polygon cube and scale it up pretty big. I made mine as big as my grid. Okay, remember this time with the scale, you can grab that center one and scale from the center outward. Okay, and we have to make sure it's polygon because we're going to be using polygon tools on this cube. Okay, everyone's good with the polygon cube, really big? All right, one thing, size doesn't matter inside Maya. Okay, I know people say it does, but it doesn't. Inside Maya, it's irrelevant. Something super tiny or something super big on camera could look identical, okay? So what we need to do now is, in order for us to see inside this room, I want to delete one of these faces. It's very rare that we would have an entire box where our object would be inside. Sometimes you do, but it's kind of rare that you would have that. So think of like a sitcom. They never show like that back wall. That's what we're going to create. So we need to delete this face. So how do we grab this face?
Click on it, set faces,
Yep,
select it, delete.
that's it.
Ah, worked.
Okay, so see how simple that is just to grab and delete that face. All right, now you'll notice that the inside of this box is black. So even though these things are paper thin, there actually is like a front and a back, or a top and a bottom, or an inside and outside to every face. Because we're working on the inside of this, what we want to do is tell Maya just to flip it, just so we can see what those things are on the inside. So we have to go back to object mode. How do we get back to object mode?
F8.
F8 until
Green.
it turns green. Excellent. All right. So now under mesh display at the very top, okay, so it says mesh display, we're just going to say reverse.
Now is that changing normals?
Yes, that flips our normals into the inside. Now the normals are what tell these pieces of geometry which direction is outward. Okay, so if we were to look at them, just so you can see what they are under here, you don't have to turn yours on. I'm just going to turn mine on. There are these little sticks. Okay, I just call them sticks. So there's a little line here coming out of the center of the face, and that line says where's the front. Right here is the front. If I reverse this, that normal pops to the other side saying this is the front. Okay, so that's all it is. So when I say it's reversing the normals, that's what it's doing. Most of the stuff isn't going to be affected by that too much here, so we should be fine. Okay, now it doesn't matter that my grid is right there in the middle of my box, except I'm kind of OCD about this stuff, and I don't want my grid in the middle of my box. I want my box to be like on the ground. So we need to move it up until it's flat on the ground. So just grab your move tool, which is W. Grab the vertical arrow, which is the green one, and just pull it straight up. Okay, so just pull it until the bottom of the box looks like it's flat on the grid. And if you want to be exact as to, you want that grid to be exactly on the bottom, you see my translate Y number way over there. It's like 12.552, and my scale Y is 24.86. This is just a stupid piece of trivia, but it's just half. So if I cut this number in half, 24.86, and I put that here, 12.43. Now it's perfectly on the grid. Yes, ma'am.
How do I get the grid again?
You have the grid.
No, in the. Never mind.
Yours is just smaller. Okay, so now we have this box here, and for all purposes, hit 1. It'll get you out of the round cube. There you go.
Okay.
If you hit 3, just so you can see it, it does this, and obviously that's going to freak you out because you just had a cube a second ago. So we just hit 1 to get us back into that. If we hit 2, it'll do that.
You don't do a wide angle lens.
Right. All right, so this is our cube sitting here. Now our cube sitting on the ground is exactly where we want it to be. What we want to do now is start to populate this box with other stuff. Okay, we're not done with it. We just want to start populating the box with other stuff. So we're clicking on the box in object mode, so it's green. And we're going to come down here to our layers. And on that far right button on the layers where it says display layers, we're going to click on that button. It says create a new layer and assign selected objects. Okay, so now our box is on that layer. We're going to double click layer 1 and just rename it. Just call it room. Okay, just like our naming outside for all of our files, we keep that same process inside of the software. Okay, so we hit save. And then what I want to do is I want to click on this third button. See how there's 3 buttons here? It says VP and then it was blank a second ago. We want to click on that until we get an R. The R means reference, okay? So once you've made your layer, you've named it, you've saved it, then you can click on this far right box and hit the R right here. And what that means is that if I were to click off of this and try to click it again, I can't do that. Okay? Now the reason we would want to do something like this is so that we don't accidentally F it up. Okay? It's perfect. It's exactly where we need it to be. I don't want to move it out of that position. If I need to, let's say I build a chaise lounge and I need more room in my room. I can just click on the R, grab this, scale it up bigger, and then turn that R back on. Okay? But for now, it's perfect. All right, so what we want to do is create a desk. So I want you to watch me create the desk, and then we're going to create the desk together, okay? So the first thing as a newbie to doing this kind of stuff is you should find reference. And it may seem silly, like why do I need reference for a desk? I know what a desk looks like. But there's 3,500 different ways that we could create a desk. And sometimes even looking at pictures of rooms, you might find like, hey, here's a cool desk for this specific room that I want to include in here. All right, so I'm just going to go back to the desks. So I'm going to create a desk, and what I want to do is create something kind of simple-ish. Okay, you can see all the different kinds of desks that there are. There was one that I found on here earlier that had some really cool cubbies like this. Okay, so I'm going to actually create a desk that has this in it and is just kind of flat for the most part. So it's kind of like this, but then it has that on top of it. All right, as you start working in 3D and as you start working in anything, it's always awesome to start a collection of reference imagery. And again, if I show you something I've already showed the other class, just ignore it or just help it sink into your brain a little better. So I have a Pinterest account. Did we talk about Pinterest? Okay. Does anyone have a Pinterest account? Couple. All right, Pinterest is a virtual bulletin board. So if you are looking at stuff and you're like, hey, I want to save this picture and reference it later, you can use Pinterest to do that. So if I go here, I don't know what that stuff is, and I look up office desk, yeah, trending stuff, what I'm going to get is a bunch of pictures of office desks, okay? And I can look at this picture and say, hey, here's some cool office desks. I'm going to pin it, and then I'm going to put it inside of this furniture one, okay? Because I made a board, a bulletin board called furniture, and now I can go and reference all of these pins I have on this board. So if I come over here to my boards, here's, where is it at? Probably on the bottom. Stylized, exterior Mac, interior furniture. There we go. Okay, so these are all different things that I've pinned. And you can pin things on your phone. You can get an app. You can search through your laptop. There's a bunch of websites that'll actually have, like, once you get the plug-in for your browser, you can find any image and just pin that image right to your board. So if you're like, I always want to collect these images and use them, this is a great way to do it. So here, look at this. I thought this was pretty awesome. It's for your couch, where you can put this piece of wood there and have your drink right on the couch. I thought that was pretty sweet. These are kind of neat too. Here's a really cool looking clock. Here's a little desk. Okay, so all of these little things here are just pins that I have, and they're basically just like ideas, like an idea board of what I want to do.
Have you ever seen that cabinet that was carved to make it look like it was glitching?
No, I didn't. These are all mechs. So these are for the advanced class. If we're working on robotic stuff, it helps to have a bunch of imagery here that I can kind of pull from as far as reference. And if I go click on the image, it'll actually take me right to where that image was found. Right inside here. Because that was a Bing search. Oops, Okay, so I encourage you to use stuff like Pinterest because it's a great way to collect source material. All right, so I could pin this board and then reference it if I need to. All right, so I'm going to create that desk. So the first thing I'm going to do is I kind of look at, not this yet, I look at the shape of the desk. So I have the flat part here, right there. Oh yeah, that's cool. So I have this here, and if I look at this, I want to break it down into the shapes of it. The part that I'm not really like set on, because we don't have to match it exactly, the right side kind of looks like it's tapered down and then comes up. That looks weird. So it's just going to be like flat up, and then I'll play with the settings after that. Okay. So I'm going to go and create a cube. Okay, and most objects inside Maya start off with a very basic shape like a cube or a sphere or a cylinder. I'm going to shape it to be about the same size as that desk would be. Oops. Okay, not the desk, but the top of it. Okay, so this is just me kind of trying to match this. So see the thickness of this and the height of that? That's what I'm trying to match there.
Can you put images into Maya?
You can, yes. And what we would do is if we wanted this to look exactly like that one, what we would do is we would bring in a picture of wood and drop it on top of there. and it would color it just like that would. Okay? So this is roughly, and again, we don't have to be exact. It's all based on the eye, okay? So if it turns out that it's too wide or too deep, we can change all that stuff after. All right, so here I have this laid out here. What I need to do is I need to create these little legs that come down. I could, let's say, duplicate it and rotate this over here. Say punch in 90, and then try to size this down. And it's just not very accurate as far as how this is going to get created. And you can see there's not going to be lined up perfectly. I'm going to turn on my wireframe so you can see this better. Okay, so we're going to do something different. We're going to do an operation called extrude, where it's actually going to pull the faces out of it. Okay, so I'm going to go over here to my cube, and I have different options here. So I have a width option where I can add divisions. Okay, so I'm going to add 3 divisions. I'm going to grab the vertices. I'm going to scale them out. And then I'm going to grab the faces here and here, and I'm going to extrude them and pull this down. Okay, so now I can say, okay, well, there's my desk. What does it look like in the room? That looks like a pretty decent looking desk, right? And if I decided I needed to change something, here's where my ability to easily switch between these modes is. I can just start grabbing faces and start pushing and pulling stuff. We have to be careful that we're not being too aggressive with it or too uncareful, that we just kind of grab stuff like this. Just like our cylinders, we don't grab it and try to line this up like that, because it's not going to line it up perfectly. All I want to do is pull it straight down. So I pull it straight down, or pull this up and then scale these outward. Okay, now why am I scaling those outward as opposed to just moving those left and moving them right?
So they're the same?
Exactly, so they're the same. If I grab this one and I move it, I don't know how far I moved it to move that one. And what happens is, to me, I'm kind of OCD about this, I want it to be exact, okay? Because if it was actually created, it would be pretty close. So if I grab them and I scale them, I'm basically like scaling them together or scaling them apart to create that thickness. Okay? So there I have this piece. So that part's done, okay? So now I'm gonna go and create this other part right here. And this part I could actually create using a separate object, or I can create it using the exact same object. I think I want to just create it as a separate object. Okay, so I'm going to make another cube. And I'm going to scale it up. I have my other desk right here. I haven't moved that desk away. It's just like right there at the origin still. Right there at this center point. And it can be inset a little bit. Doesn't have to be exact. But if I needed to, I can click on that and get the exact scale. And again, I'm kind of sizing this up to just that one piece. Just this one ledge right here at the bottom. That's what I'm trying to fit this one into. Okay, and again, this is my way of modeling. You might watch a video where they show, a completely different way to model it. As long as the results are awesome, it doesn't matter. I've seen some where it's just a disaster afterwards, so just want to be careful. All right. So again, I'm looking at how I'm zooming around, and I'm looking at the edges of this, okay, because I want to be very accurate with how I model this. Notice too that if I click on this object, there's no movement in the X direction. So you see translate X is at 0 and translate Z is at 0, these two numbers right here. Okay? If I moved this way or that way, it may cause some offsetting. It may cause this to not be lined up. See how it's hanging over here and it's not lined up there? Then I have to worry about another thing. So I keep it perfectly straight right on that center line. The same thing with this. I did move it in the Z, but that's just because I had to push it back because it's not perfectly lined up.
Is there an align feature?
There is, but it's easier to keep it like this for now. The align feature I typically use for stacking objects or getting them evenly distributed. Okay. It just makes your job easier if you keep this thing in mind. See that dark X right here, that dark T, whatever you want to call it? That's the origin. That's where everything gets created. So if you build stuff around this area, your modeling is like 10 times easier because it's just a matter of, okay, it's +5 here. I want the same thing on the other side, so I just duplicate it and make it -5. It's +4 up here, make it negative, now it's -4, and it's even, it's symmetrical, okay? There's other ways to do it, but this is my way of doing that. All right, it's the easiest way, right? So now I need to create this, and just like those legs on the bottom, I need to create these things here, okay? So if we look at that, we have 1 division on the left, 2, 3, and 4 divisions, okay? So we have 4 divisions that compose, or comprise, or whatever word you want to use, this stuff up here. So I need to go to my divisions over here, and go 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4 areas. 1, 2, 3. So one more. Now this is the cool thing too, is that I could have added as many as I want. I could add 30 divisions in there. If I'm making, like, I think the one next to it here has a bunch of divisions. If I'm making something like that, I could add 100 divisions if I wanted to. Yeah, I would actually do that one maybe a little bit different, but whatever. All right. So in order for me to get this. Okay, oops, back to this one. In order for me to get these little divisions here, what I'm going to do is something a little bit different, okay? So I'm going to go to edge mode. Okay, and I double click these edges. I want to grab all the edges all the way around. And under edit mesh, I'm going to go to bevel. Okay, now what that did is it put in more divisions. But what I can do is I can take my bevel fraction here down. 0.5. There we go. And now we have a nice little division here, a nice little division there, kind of lined up for where I want this, or sorry, this and that to be. Okay, maybe a little bit less, 0.02. All right, I'm just being picky now, whatever. All right, so now we're going to do the same thing. So I'm just going to grab these faces right there. I think I want to add another division here. Okay, so in this case I want to add an extra division because I do want to have a lip here and a lip there that I could add onto that. So I'm going to go under mesh tools now, and I'm going to use the insert edge loop, and this allows me just to draw in divisions where I want. Now this is where I have to kind of eyeball that and eyeball this. I don't like eyeballing, but we'll just eyeball it for this. All right, so now I'm going to go to faces, click, 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 click. Okay, and I'm going to be kind of careful. As I'm clicking these faces, it's very, very possible that I may have selected something on the bottom or selected something on the back or the sides, and that will cause issues later. So I'm looking at where my pivot is. My pivot is at the center of the top, which is awesome. If I accidentally selected something else, you can see how it dropped down a little bit because I selected this side face. So that tells me that it's not perfectly lined up. All right. So I used extrude on this one. I'm going to use extrude on the top one. So I'm going to go to edit mesh and say extrude. And I'm just going to pull it up to as high as I think this thing should be. And I'm going to go to edit mesh again, extrude again, and then add another little division right here. Okay? So now I have a little division down in the bottom. I have these openings here, and then I have a little division on the top. That should be good. All right. So now I can take these divisions, and I can go back to edit mesh, go back to extrude, and then push it in. Back to object mode. And now there essentially is that specific item. Now if I wanted to just be a little bit fancier, you can see how we have, number one, we have a little bit of a lip on here. So you can see how this kind of lips out right there. As long as I have a face, I can grab the faces and extrude it out. Okay, I have to make sure I grab all of them. If I don't grab all of them, then it's not going to work.
There's like a multi-select tool?
There is. If I do this and then I shift double click, it goes all the way around.
Okay.
Okay. Sometimes people get freaked out about that because they do it wrong. But yes, there's a quick way to do that. All right, so now we go back to extrude. I'm going to add a little bit of thickness here, so 0.1. Too much. 0.03. Okay. I don't care what these numbers are. I just know that 1 was too much or 0.1 was too much. 0.02 was not enough. So we add that in there. All right, so now I have a nice little area here where this is nicely dipped in. Okay, and I could add some other stuff here. Oops, using that same insert edge loop tool, I can add a division right about there. And then I can go to my faces. This is where that doesn't work because I have a pattern that I'm grabbing here. And I can take this and extrude it and pull it up. And now I have a nice little rim right there. And I could even go into edge mode, grab this edge and that edge. Oops, not you, you. Go to my move tool and then just pull that down and maybe even pull it back some. Again, kind of creating just a little bit more design to that specific piece. All right, now I could go crazy with this. I could add anywhere I have a face here. Let's say right there, I could just extrude it. There's no reason to extrude it right here. I'm just showing you I can. Oops. And then I can extrude it again, and you can see how I can just start creating this random stuff. There. I don't know what that is, but it's just sticking out.
An important box.
Yeah, it's an important box. It's a time traveling box. Okay, so that's what we're going to be doing. So we're going to start off with just that base piece, and then we'll create that. Do we need to take a 10-minute break first? So a good practice as you start modeling stuff is to obviously keep everything organized. So because I don't want to throw out this masterpiece, I'm just going to put it on a new layer, call it first go, and then just hit the V and it hides it. That way I don't need to see it, but it's still there somewhere inside my scene hiding. Okay? So the first thing we need to do is we need to create a polygon cube. So create a polygon cube, and just like I did, shape it up to fit it to be that size of the desktop. All right. Then we're going to go over here to the right side, and where it says subdivisions in the width, we're going to put in 3 subdivisions. Okay. Now, if, let's say, you deleted a different face on your big cube, okay, your subdivisions in the width may be different. Yours may come out, one second, yours may come out like this, okay? And if your subdivisions come out like that, then you just come over here to the subdivisions and you just switch them, okay? So it's no big deal. We just need them to go in that direction the long way.
Right-click and then select edges.
Yep. Okay, now to grab the edges all the way around it, we just double-click the first edge. Okay, so we double-click one of them, doesn't matter which one we start with. And then we hold down Shift and double-click the other one. Okay, so we went to Edge, double-click the first edge, hold down Shift, double-click the second one. And then we're just going to grab the one scale handle and scale it out slowly to give us the thickness of our legs. Okay, so just grab that one scale handle and just stretch it out and try to get it to that one side. Make sure as you're scaling stuff outward that we don't go beyond that shape, because that will cause stuff that we don't want to happen. Okay, so we've scaled it out. We have these loops. I need to adjust mine a touch. There we go. All right, so now we're going to go underneath it, and we're going to grab the face. So we hold down the right mouse button, and we go to face. And we click this face and shift-click the other face. Cool, no objections? Yes, sir. So I go to Edit Mesh, I go to Extrude. Now you'll notice that we get this weird tool. This tool has like the boxes from Scale on it. It has a arrow from the Move tool on it, and then it also has this round thing on here. Okay, remember we talked about like the front of a face or the back of a face, okay, where we had that normal where it could swap inside and out, just like this box, how we had that outside and inside. What this blue one does is it moves it perpendicular to the surface. So if this face is like that and we extrude it, it'll pull it perpendicular, okay, right out this way. It won't pull it up, it won't pull it sideways, it pulls it in the same straight line as that surface, all right? Never use the red, never use the green, just the blue one is the only one we need to use. And if we grab the blue one and just pull it down, we can pull that down to about there. All right, so now our table has legs. Okay, when you're done, I switch back to the Move tool and I go back to Object Mode. So we hit W to get to the Move tool and then F8 until we can get back to Object Mode. Make sure you're spinning around your object. Make sure you know exactly where your object is located. All right, so I put my cube right on top of the desk. In order to get divisions lined up with this, I use that division thing over here on the right. So I need divisions that are equal inside here. Now, there's 20 tools that we could use to make this, okay? I'm just using this one because it's kind of the easiest. So I put in 3 divisions. I think that's what it was. Yeah. 3 divisions again so that I can have this kind of blocked out, okay? Now remember, if yours don't go the same way that mine do, you just have to swap it. So it might be the width, it might be the depth. Shouldn't be the height, okay? Now what I need to do is create a division there. So if we look at this, so this cube here, what we did was we moved it, we scaled it up, we kind of flattened it, then we added divisions into this, and it turned out pretty good. All right. So now let's say that I grab another cube, and for this one, instead of going here and scaling these out, what if I were to grab the faces? Okay, so you see how I scale those faces out just like this, and just like that, and just like this, and essentially we're getting the very exact same shape, right? There's pretty much no difference as far as the shape of them, maybe the proportions, but the shapes are pretty much the same. But now I'm going to go over here to my polycube, and then I'm going to add my divisions. And you can see that in this way, it's screwed up, okay? So Maya remembers everything that you've done to a shape, okay? So as we're creating this, it knows that you grabbed this face and you scaled it up, and then you deformed it to create that box. Now when you add new divisions, what happens is it changes that history, okay? So think of like Back to the Future kind of stuff. So right now, when I went to here and I grabbed this face right there, and I shift-clicked, oops, that face right there, we don't see it on the surface, but behind the scenes, Maya is actually selecting specific face numbers. So what it did is it selected face number 4 and face number 5, and those are the ones that it's extruding and scaling outward. So now when we go in here and we add more divisions to this, face 4 is somewhere. I have no idea where face 4 is, okay?
It renumbers the faces.
Correct.
And then but the scaling still stays to the same face number.
Correct. So it still remembers you scaled face 4 up like this, but now face 4 might be like the top face, or it might be like a bottom face, or it might be some random face, okay? So we typically will not add divisions this way if we've deformed it with the vertices at all.
How do you add more subdivisions like post-scaling?
That's where we could use like the insert edge loop. Okay, so under mesh tools, which we'll do in a second, we would do insert edge loop, and that would allow us just to put in exactly where we want the divisions to be. Or using some of the options in here, we could specify multiple edge loops at specific intervals. Okay? So just be aware of that for now, that we just have to be careful with where we're selecting stuff.
How'd you get it to get so you could see the lines on the inside, not
this button right here, it's kind of difficult when we're inside something. We see gray and gray. If you click this button right there, it'll turn your wireframe on, so it's a little bit more apparent, so we can see our stuff. Okay, it's the one next to the checkerboard sphere. All right, so we need to add another division right here next to this one. So I'm going to do the same thing I did before. I'm going to go to Edges and double click it, and then Shift double click the next edge. And under Edit Mesh, I'm going to go to Bevel. Okay, so we click those edge loops, what they're called, edge loops, that go all the way around. And then we went to Edit Mesh, and we did a bevel. And what the bevel does is it takes that one edge and it splits it into two edges. That's the default, is two edges. Okay, so now we can adjust this fraction. Now all of these here that have numbers, those are actual sliders. Okay, with super small numbers, it's very difficult to use it as a slider, but just watch mine here as I click and drag on the word. You can see how I can adjust that positioning. But because it's a slider, it's actually very difficult to get it lined up perfectly inside there. Okay. Now, not to throw another hotkey at you, but if you hold Control as you click and drag on that slider, it shrinks how fast it moves. Okay. So watch how fast this moves here. Okay, it's jumping basically every 1/10 of a unit. If I hold Control and drag, it goes every 100th. So I have much more finer abilities right there. Yeah, I just found that out over Christmas. I was like, there's got to be a way. Okay, and that thickness is going to be the thickness of those openings there.
Oh, I had the same question. Oh, yeah.
And you just click and drag where you want it. So like right here, let's say you want to add an edge loop right here. So you're going to go on this edge, and you're just going to click and drag along that edge. Click on it first, just to activate it, then click and drag. Yeah, I don't know why the menu didn't show up. There we go. Now you can hold down Control and click and drag on the word fraction. There we go.
Can you tell me what menu is in that little tree?
Oh, you did not double click. That's fine. So double click that edge.
Okay.
And then shift double click. Right?
Wait.
Mm-hmm. Yep, you did the same thing. So hit undo. Keep going. Right there. Okay, so I'm going to hit B first to turn soft select off. So now it's a gradient. Now double click. Do it again. There we go. Then shift double click. There we go. Now bevel again. Yep. Cool. All right. So another thing to keep in mind, we have this right here. Okay, we have one division here. I want to put another division this way. So what I have to do is I click and drag along this edge until I get it lined up with that. Okay? So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to click and drag along this edge until I get it about there. I'm going to click, drag along there. All right. So now what we need to do is I need to take this face and I need to extrude this face up. Okay? So I need to grab the faces for this top piece. And so I'm just shift clicking each one of these faces. And I'm spinning around to make sure I didn't grab any other faces, just those top ones. Okay, once I have those top faces only selected, then I'm going to go to Edit Mesh and say Extrude. And then grab that blue arrow and pull it up. Okay, leave it selected. So once you've extruded it and you've pulled it up, leave that selected. And then you want to extrude again. So go to Edit Mesh again, go go back to extrude, and extrude it up again just to give it a little bit of thickness for that top board. Okay, so you can see now we've created this kind of pattern of where we could extrude into each one of those areas. As a beginner, this knowledge about how to just go in there and start building stuff is not going to be just like you're going to know what to do. A lot of this is going to need practice. A lot of this needs to play around. The first time I built something like this, I did build it horribly wrong. And then I'm like, oh, you know, it'd be easier if I did it like this. And then I just extruded this stuff out and then pushed this stuff in and blah, blah, blah. Okay? So just practicing with this, it makes a huge difference. All right, so now we can grab these 3 faces in the middle and extrude those 2. And then grab the blue arrow, oops, and push the blue arrow in. Now if it turns black, we've gone too far, so we pull it back into the gray. All right, just to kind of hit home what we've just done, look at how I can just take a regular cube
Turn it into a tree.
and turn it into a tree.
Awesome.
All right, so here's my cube. Now I'm going to use the same tools-ish that we just used. So I'm going to use the edge loop tool, and I want an opening here, I want an opening there, I want an opening here, and there. That's good. Now I need to have divisions for where those lines are going to come around. So if I just went in here, you can see how I can just add more divisions. And I can add a division here for this side, add a division there for that side. And all I've done is just isolate where I want to extrude stuff. So now if I go to face mode, you can see how I can grab those faces and extrude it. And now I have just kind of like a bookcase, okay? It's a different way to do it. This way is terribly inaccurate, and it would drive me crazy to have this in my scene because I eyeballed all of this. So you see that this opening is a lot bigger than that opening. And if this was slats of wood, the wood would be consistent sized where, I don't know, I'm super picky about this. This is really big and then this is really small, so that's like really off. The process is still the same though, okay? Adding divisions where we want these things to be. If you guys are at this stage where you play around with it and you get to the understanding of I need these divisions, then the next step is going to be, okay, how do I make this a little bit more accurate? And that's where we get into something like this, where we're adding divisions based on more math, where Maya is kind of inputting those divisions. Or if we decide, you know what, this is off a bit, let me see if I can just grab this face here to this face, and I can just move this in just so it doesn't look as off, okay? And maybe I'll take this one up a little bit so that doesn't look as off. And maybe I'll grab these vertices here and kind of bring this in so it's a little bit more even. Okay, eventually you will get to this stage where this becomes a lot easier. It does take time. It does take a lot of practice, okay? So if you're only in class and that's the only time you work on the software, you're not going to get to the point where you understand this stuff. You have to work on it outside of class, even if it's just modeling stupid little things like this, okay? Yes, sir.
Can we use like a model? Can we model something for one of our daily pictures? Or,
What do you mean?
like, say if I wanted to go in and if there's like a monthly challenge or something, I want to
Yeah,
model something off that, put some effort into it.
and put that stuff into your scene. What was that?
But like how we have to do our sketches. Can we make a model?
For the sketch. But those little sketching challenges are great. The sculpting challenges, those are great things to have inside here as extra pieces. You're going to find today is probably like the worst day you're going to have in Maya. Next class, it's going to be a little bit easier. The next class, it's going to be a little bit easier. Every class is going to be a little bit easier, hopefully. Sometimes you might like backtrack and then it's like, I'm doing worse. But eventually you'll get to that point, usually around the 8-week mark, where things are starting to click, and all of these tools, these 3 tools, beveling, inserting edge loops, and extruding, all that becomes a lot easier, okay? When we do our very last project in this class, we're going to be using beveling, extruding, inserting edge loops over and over and over again, okay? Those are the 3 things that I'm constantly using in the software. All right. So now let's take our desk here that we have and let's put it into a layer and let's put it kind of into our scene. Right now, if we were to grab this in object mode and move it, we are moving these together, but they're not actually together. They're two separate pieces. Do you see the two colors on my screen? One is white and one is green. That means that I have two separate objects selected. Okay? So what I want you to do is group objects. How do you group in any other program? On a PC. Control G, there you go. So we're going to hit Control G to group those two objects together. Okay? So when we group those two objects together, they both turn green. All right? And then I can give this a name up here in my channel box that says desk. Okay? And then I can move it to the back wall. That's where desks usually are.
Wait, where do you go to do that?
Right there, right where that group 1 was. Okay? So we Control G grouped it. We moved it to the back wall, and then we renamed it. Now, as a FYI, if I then go through and try to grab the objects, you'll see that they appear to not be grouped. Okay? Grouping in Maya works different than grouping in other programs. I can group every item on my desk, but still manipulate them all individually. Okay? So, if we go to the outliner, in your shelf, you have a button that says Out L. Click on the Out L. Okay? The outliner lays out all the objects in our scene. So if you look, there's a white parallelogram. A white parallelogram with a red arrow. And that white parallelogram with a red arrow means that it's a group. Okay, that specific icon means group. But if I click that group, there we go. Now I've grabbed that group. Okay, if I click on a piece, I'm actually just grabbing one of these pieces that's inside of that desk. Okay, so just be aware that there is a difference between grabbing a group and grabbing the individual pieces of that group. Okay, so just so you're aware of that. Now we'll put it on a layer. So we grab the group, we click the new layer button, and we call this desk layer. Because Maya likes to name things specific, we can't actually call it the same exact name as our desk. It doesn't like that, so I have to call it desk layer. And then I can hit the R so that it's referenced and we can't accidentally select it and move it. Okay?
If you don't want to like separately edit things, how can you group them together so that they are together?
There's another thing that's called combining, which like locks them together. We can pull them apart too, but it's always best to group them because we may want to edit them individually and do stuff to them individually.
How do you select the group one more time?
Under the outliner, you click on the group. So the Out L, then you can click that group.
Where is Out L?
In your shelf, you change.
Better than 3 weeks.
Right. So Control S to save. That's the hotkey for that one. And I'm going to call mine Sarcona _ Miniroom _ 01. That way I know whose file it is, I know what it is, and I know the iteration of that specific file. So I call it Sarcona Miniroom 01. I put underscores between each one of those sections. Notice too where it saves your file, it throws it automatically into the scenes folder. Remember we made our project, created our project, we use those scenes, source images, and images folder. It knows save scenes in the scenes folder, okay? So it's going in the scenes folder, that's exactly where we leave it, and then we save.
See you tomorrow, Sean.
See ya. Once we're done with that, we close Maya down. There it is. We close this down, close that down.
What do we need the file as?
And then you can back up your preferences again. I'm going to show backing up preferences. Then I can go to the 2016 folder on the P drive and Control X to copy it or to cut it, or right click and go to cut, whichever way you prefer. And then inside of our 2510 folder, there might be a 2016. I like to delete that one and then just paste my new fresh one right there. That process may take a couple times of getting used to. Some people get very confused with file management, so you just got to do it until it's locked into your brain. All right. Once that's done, back up your folder.